So, talk about how to stay fit during the pandemic, especially like now I think it's coming more to a little bit of an end, but during the first part, and certainly like in New York still, we're still mostly like stuck inside. So, what can you do to stay fit and and keep your your workouts fresh during this kind of indoor isolation period?
Okay. I'll start, Kelly. Is that right?
Go for it.
And well, what it is that one, you want to obviously you don't have so much external load. You don't have that many equipment out there, right? So I would say if you have let's say resistance bands, or if you're using your body weight, or you take a book bag, put some books in it. These are things you can use. Water jugs, if you're able to get that, you can use that. And what you essentially want to do is, right, so you're working on, you're going to work on push exercise, pull exercise. You're going to work on vertical, and that will be, let's say if you're doing a squat, you're doing a push-up, you're doing a row. And what you can do to change the variables is you can change your tempo, right? So tempo, not only changing the tempo, then you can, obviously you can add more weight to your book bag if you're putting in more books.
For someone who doesn't know what tempo means in the fitness world, can you explain that term?
Oh yeah, so tempo would be an example is you descending down into a squat, right? So instead of, let's say you go for your count of 3. So let's say it's 1, 2, 3. That's like a tempo right there that you're going, right?
So moving down from the top of the position to the bottom of the position, smooth.
And also going up. So it's just changing that.
Or even holding, like an ISO at the transition point.
Exactly, or that isometric hold, right? Isometric hold, basically you're holding it.
Yep.
That position at the bottom, right? So that will be changing your tempo. So you can do an example if I said 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to use the squat as an example, right? 3 seconds and going down, 2-second hold at the bottom, and then 1 second you come right back up. That's an example of a tempo, right? And so you can change that up, right? And that can make it, the variable where it's difficult, make it a little bit more challenging for you. So for right now, those are things definitely you can do. And then you also want to change your volume, right? So how many reps you're going to do, right? So if you did 10 one week, let's say next week you add on, you're going to do 12 reps, right? Same weight. You can then again, like I said, change the weight of it if you can. With either the resistance band or getting heavier books, putting in your book bag. If it's body weight, again, you just change the reps, change the tempo, isometric holds, pause sets. Pause sets basically just pausing, holding it. That's your pause set right there. So those are examples of, as of right now in the pandemic, and you're not able to get to a gym or you don't have weights at home. These are things that you can do.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like the first instinct when this kind of thing happens and like we don't have access to gyms is to just start up some kind of running routine, which is like fine, and you'll probably gain from that. But I'm concerned about only doing that. You have to think about how it's the same movement over and over again, and it's really important to move your body in various ways. That said, it's also a lot of impact, and I'm not confident that everybody's technique is amazing. So I worry about just like creating injuries in this time, just because you've decided to just like switch your schedule completely. So I think all the things that Ahmed listed are like excellent. That's what I did right at first. I had 0 weights at home. I had a couple bands. So I was literally using like a big pot of water and a water jug. And I was just like, okay, if you like, the regular things you manipulate are tempo and reps, like you said. But the biggest one is frequently the weight that you use. And without that, I played with the other 2. So that said, I would, tend to go that direction. I would also try to track your success or like your changes over time for some kind of motivation. I also think that some kind of like altitude landing, like jumping off of a box and like training the landing there, because we're not getting a lot of force absorption right now. And that's a great way to work on braking speed and ability. That, you know, like a drop jump, that would be like a progression from that, where you drop off of something and then jump immediately. Even sprinting, but again, I would work on technique before you jump right into sprinting. And I wouldn't do it for conditioning. I would do it for like short, like 5 to 10 yard sprints. Yeah.
Gotcha.
With a lot of rest, like 60 seconds rest.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would recommend for people in quarantine right now.
Absolutely. And that's great. And like Kelleigh, to jump on what Kelleigh was saying, is just right, the running part, where I got, you know, even a lot of some of my clients were like, oh, should I just go running? I'm like, no, you shouldn't go long distance running. You're not a cross country runner, right? And the reason being, it just doesn't, I'm not against long distance running. What I am saying is that in terms for fencing as an athlete, it just doesn't work, right? It doesn't transfer over.
And why is that?
Because you're going steady state, and you're just running steady state, right? If you're looking to get quicker, that doesn't make you faster. It can make you better as a cross country runner, but definitely not as a fencer. So it doesn't translate at all. One may say, I may need to use this for endurance. That doesn't also transfer over for the sport, right? And the reason why I'm saying is that, yes, you may, when we're fencing, you know, someday, Andrew, obviously, Kelleigh, we know this, that a tournament can last all day. But the thing is, you're getting breaks during that time, right? It's not, you're not fencing all throughout.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Breaks, right? So you have your match. There are gonna be breaks in that match. So that in any way that does not relate to you going running for a long distance time. So what Kelleigh said is correct in terms of you're gonna do sprint work, which is actually the best thing for most athletes, actually. You're gonna do your sprint work. And that transfers over better as a fencing athlete than the long distance running. And also to her point, the thing is, it's very important that you're formed with the running, right? I wouldn't just say, go out there and just run. Most people don't have good form, so they're not applying the proper force. They're not having the right mechanics. That also can be a problem. That can actually lead to the injury too, you know, which we will talk about, but proper mechanics in terms of running before I would say that, here, do these types of sprints and stuff like that.
You know who's interesting on that is the running mechanics. It's run by a Canadian actually, but he has a course that he's been doing in the States, and he comes down to the States a lot. Derek Hansen. And then also there's a woman named Run RX. That's her Instagram handle. She does a lot she's more long distance running. But I've learned from both of them, and Lee Taft as well. So any of those people, if you're looking to follow someone on Instagram or whatever, or YouTube, I would definitely look into them for technique advice.
Yeah, these guys will send me those links after we're done with this video, and you can find them in the video description. So
sure. The other thing I was going to say on the running topic is, like, if you look at the work to rest ratios of a fencing tournament, like it's like a 10-hour tournament, and I think what they say is like 78 minutes of that is spent in a fencing bout. And this is obviously going to vary between foil, epee, and saber, but and it's only like 30 minutes of actual movement in fencing. So while it's a 10-hour tournament, it's not an aerobic endurance event. So when they look at like the VO2 max, so like the max oxygen consumption ability of an athlete, they don't see that we're better than sedentary people, thank goodness, but we're not like aerobic athletes, and that's when they're testing like high level athletes. So that kind of shows that it's not the most important factor, but there is a good argument to like having a good aerobic base to improve your recovery between like pools and DEs, for example.
Right. So the next question is that I've gotten a lot is, as a fencer, do you want to train more with weights or with your own body weight? Because I think a lot of people have the conception that if you train with weights a lot, it's going to make your muscles slower. So what is your opinion on weighted exercises versus body weight exercises for fencing specifically?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can, I don't know who wants to go first, but I think both of us would argue that both body weight and weighted exercises, we're not power lifters, so you're not going to just do max strength exercise. And I think that's where that like myth comes from, that it's going to make you slow and bulky, because yes, they're moving objects of a high weight at a low velocity, but you want to be looking at like what speed and what force you're using on like the force velocity curve, if you have like a graph, and if you're varying that, then you're not just doing the max strength stuff. So I think like Ahmed and I were chatting the other day, and we seem to kind of agree with most things, but we both agree that you definitely need to incorporate some kind of weight component to your training. But I don't know what you think.
Yeah. So before you answer, Ahmed, so for anyone who's watching, they should really only be concerned about slowing themselves down because of weights if their goal is just to become like jacked and like lift as heavy as possible, right? That's what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah. There's a really good video if you search, and I can send you this link as well, strength speed continuum. And the strength speed continuum Eric Cressy talks about, like I would click on that link. It just like basically people spend all their time when they haven't lifted a weight in like the absolute speed section of the continuum. So that's like high velocity, low load. But if you bring them over to the like higher load, then you're gonna actually bring them into the middle where power is, like medium velocity or like a fairly high velocity and low medium load.
Okay.
Yeah.
Add on this topic.
Yeah. So, in to even go more on it, right? So there, with the myth of that if I strength train, that I'm going to get too big and bulky, because I would say, social media adds on to that. There's just so much out there. And also the history, in my experience, the history of with fencing and coaches saying, hey, don't lift. And that's, it's an old school mentality of not to lift because, it'll get you slower. So all that, with the athletes seeing that, they're not knowing, hey, what works best. And just like Kelleigh previously said, yes, we agree, doing both body weight and also the weightlifting, right? So for me, if I'm programming a client who's first coming into training, right, and they've never done it before, of course, I'm starting with the body weight, right? I want to make sure that their form is correct, make sure that they're moving right? When I see that, okay, they're getting that, they have that form down, they're understanding the exercise, then we'll start adding in some external load, which will be, the weight, and then, progress from there. But it's very important that fencing athletes, definitely do that weightlifting. Not only for just getting stronger, but with that, it also prevents injury in the long run.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And it allows you to, it extends that career. I'm not saying that, one cannot get injured by doing the strength training. But what I am saying is that it does reduces the chances of injury, and that's what we're looking for, right? That's a big part of it. And also that you're even able to recover faster when you do get injured, so that is like, for me, definitely a big focus where, yes, I want obviously my the athletes to get stronger, but the big part is when I look at it, it's like, all right, were we able to get through the whole season and you weren't injured? That's a plus.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's not fun to train or compete injured, and it's definitely not when you're going to be your best, when you're like, when I land, it kind of hurts. I don't really want to push that much in my lunge, or like changing direction backwards to front, like hurts my ankle. I don't really want to do that. And like your body remembers those things, right?
Yeah.
So best to avoid as much as possible, though, as you said, like we we certainly don't give you some kind of guarantee that you're not going to get injured.
Yeah.
It happens, people get run into, they accidentally overtrain a little bit, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Injuries are unavoidable, but you do the best that you can to minimize the risks that you take.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I was going to add, when you said history, it made me think of this. For one, I totally agree. There's like an old school mentality that we shouldn't lift, which, I disagree with. But the other thing is, I think there was like this trend in training that kind of moved away from functional approaches at a certain point to more of like a body lifting type of bodybuilding, bodybuilding approach, which was more about muscles and hypertrophy, and like you're focusing on bicep curls today, and this squat focuses on this quad in this way. And like, that's not the way that I talk about things or think about things with my clients. It's more about, like you said earlier, the, horizontal, like the pushing and the pulling and the knee dominant and the hip dominant type stuff.
Gotcha.